Today on Job Description, we're talking to Patrick Gaudin, an old friend of mine now living in Florida who, somewhat late in life, became an active beekeeper and bee removal expert. It'll become clear that Patrick has great affection and respect for bees, as well as a whimsical manner in explaining the rewards of life as a beekeeper.
Hello, it's Patrick.
Patrick, it's Rick.
Hey, what's going on, Rick?
What have you learned about the human race from dealing with bees?
Well, I've learned that humans we cannot get together and work as a team nearly as well as bees can, that's for sure. And they're selfless creatures who will put their individual lives on the line for the greater good. And humans cannot seem to fathom that concept at this point. And I don't know if we ever will.
I suppose it's best to ask Patrick, how does one start to work with bees professionally?
Well, it depends on what your definition of professional is, because I consider myself a glorified hobbyist, and I do make some money, but it was an accident in my case. I had a friend on Facebook about 10 or so years ago who they were discussing bees and the troubles bees were going through as far as collapse and all that. I'm sure most people have heard about those issues.
Well, I'll tell you what, briefly clarify that or explain it.
Well, over the past 20 years or so, there's been a phenomenon called colony collapse disorder, and there's been various theories on what's causing it, and some people think it's pesticides. Some people think it's the way bees are handled, in the commercial setting, believe it or not, because they're shipped around the nation to pollinate various crops. And it's harsh on the bees, but that's how we eat. I'm not complaining about it, but and also the harsh winters up north, that takes out a lot of bees yearly.
So there's been a decline in population. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but sometimes there'll be reports that bees are on the comeback, especially here in the South. Because as I said, we don't have the harsh winters down here, so bees are rather abundant. But we still have issues.
So you have a friend on Facebook, and he was in conversation about this bee situation.
Well, it was actually a lady in Arizona, but that's beside the point, I guess. But yes, they were telling me about all this, and I was fascinated, and I kept reading more and more about it and watching YouTube videos of people removing bees from people's homes. And and I wanted to buy some bees, just to start a colony for myself, but my wife wasn't going to be tolerant of buying bugs.
So she should have been appreciative that it wasn't cockroaches or something.
Well, exactly. Or yeah. So, but it didn't matter. Even though bees are useful, some wives just are not tolerant of that. That's not a priority in life to have bugs in your backyard. So what happened is I thought, well, how am I going to acquire bees then if I'm, can't justify paying for them? So I started learning how to remove bees from people's homes and or gathering swarms. So, and I also started building my own hives, just to do things on the cheap, so to speak.
But how do you, did you is there a class in it, or did you apprentice with a professional bee wizard? Or?
That's an excellent question. I did go out on a bee removal one time with a gentleman by the name of Robert. And after that, I was on my own. And the first couple of removals I did by myself were disasters. And,
well, wait, what does that mean? Did you get stung 400 times? Or?
Oh, I didn't have a legit bee suit the first time, so I dressed up in a raincoat and a like a helmet, and I almost died of heat exhaustion. Just things like that. And
That you
I
look
don't know
back
if you could.
now and it should have been obvious, but
Well, I don't know whether you chalk it up to inexperience or a low IQ or both, but I learned. And things are pretty smooth now with all that, and I've come a long way.
well, I mean, this sounds, speaking of low IQs, particularly stupid, but what's the problem if someone has a bunch of bees in the substructure of their house or whatever, their garage?
Yeah, usually what the issue can be, and bees, by the way, usually they mind their own business and don't actively go after people. But what happens if you get a lawnmower or weed eater around the entrance of the colony? They'll sometimes start going after you, either a couple of them or hundreds. It depends on the genetics of that colony. Some are more sensitive to those vibrations than others, and of course, I have hives in my backyard, and I have to put on a bee suit to mow or weed eat right around them. But the rest of my yard is fine. I can do it without the bee suit. But when you're within feet of them, you have to suit up. So yes, that's one of the issues people have when they have bees in their home or even trees is them attacking people around machinery.
All right. Now, I have watched some of the videos. We should point out that you have a website, savebeesflorida.com,
Yes.
and that in turn connects us with videos that you do of some of the jobs you're on. And what I like, I mean, I've known you for more years than it's probably scary to think how long we've known one another. But just in terms of mortality, uh, we've known each other a lot longer than we're going to know each other. But I know your personality, and I think it's fascinating that in some of these videos you're talking to the bees.
Well, I'm usually narrating, but sometimes I'll go break out in song, such as
Yes.
"Reunited" by Peaches and Herb. But
Would you sing that for us now?
reunited. No, I just woke up.
Sorry about that. But yes. So what I guess I'm trying to say is that there is a tangible and a sincere appreciation of and affection for the bees. Do
That
I
is
infer
correct.
that correctly?
I
Yes.
have not gotten tired of working with bees in the 10 or so years I've been doing it. I wish I could consider it my full-time job, but it's, I have not gotten tired of it. I adore them.
Well, one thing that I've noticed that's sort of recurring as you go, you might say, um, we haven't. I don't see any signs of the queen. I haven't found the queen yet.
Uh-huh.
What does a queen look like compared to the rest of the bees?
Well, first of all, she walks around in a more graceful manner, but she is shy. So she walks differently, believe it or not.
Seriously.
And she's usually a brighter color, like a brighter orange, and she's longer and a little bit fatter.
Huh.
Now, some people there are male bees. They're called drones, and they're fatter, but they're built like goofy linebackers, And some people mistake them for the queen, but they don't look anything like the queen. They're fat and ugly, and
So
the
I could be one
queens.
of those.
I haven't seen you in 20 years, but I doubt your drone status at this point.
Okay. But all right. So quickly discuss the dynamics of a bee community.
Whew. Okay. Well, as I said, they work as a team, and it's interesting because they actually have different jobs as they age. The first things they do when they're young is they actually clean the comb, to get the cells ready for the queen to lay eggs, and they actually nurse larvae. They have they're called nurse bees. So these are genetically assigned to them by age, and then later on in their life, after they're a couple of weeks old, they actually go out and forage for food until they die. Literally work themselves to death. They wear out their wings, but that's the latter part of their lives is outside of the hive,
And this is
and
all instinctual.
that's exactly right.
Huh. That's okay. That's amazing. And then, so their job, they, I don't know this. I'm not being intentionally idiotic or anything, but um, they make honey.
Yes, they do store honey, and they store pollen also, which is actually called bee bread once it's in the colony and they ferment it. So the bee pollen that people you get in the store is actually not bee bread. That's the pollen that's collected off their legs as they enter the beehive, and it's not as good a quality as bee bread, but that's another story.
Do you think
So
that people marketing it as scrapings from bee legs would have less success?
Uh, it's not bad for you. It's very good for you, but it's you might as well call it tree pollen or plant pollen instead of bee pollen because it's not in the fermented stage yet. That's in the cell.
All right.
They actually pack it in really tight with enzymes that they secrete, and it's referred to as bee bread, and it's excellent for you.
Does it taste good?
It tastes very polleny. Let's put it that way.
I'm not sure what that means, but it actually, at least now I have a sticky taste in my mouth that's
Yeah,
psychosomatic.
but it's rather enjoyable. But let's put it this way: there's hardly the occasion somebody's going to get a piece of comb out of the hive and just start chomping on it.
Okay.
So
That makes
so
sense.
it's a rare treat. Let's put it that way.
Okay. So someone calls you and says, I've got 500 bees that are under the eaves of my gutter or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So now you keep bees at your own house, but when you
Yes.
vacuum, walk us through how you remove and rescue these bees to be moved from the source of the problem to wherever they're going to be safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing when you get on the scene, you have to size up what's going on as far as the construction of the home. Am I going to cut into the home, or are the bees in a soffit? Are they behind a wall? Am I going to do it from the inside or outside? So you have to be real careful with this kind of stuff, and especially if it's a nice home. Um, so and also
Patrick,
construction.
let me
Mhm,
interrupt you.
mhm.
As you say that, and again, watching some of the videos you've done where you've literally had to cut into established parts of a structure or something like that. So,
Yes.
how much do you need to know about electricity, for example, or carpentry that maybe
Yes.
someone going into the business wouldn't anticipate needing to know?
This is actually a very good question. It's a very hot topic within the beekeeping community with people that do removals, because you'll see arguments back and forth as to how this should be taken care of and how much regulation there should be on beekeepers as far as cutting into homes and then actually doing the repair work thereafter. So this is a hot topic. So in my case, I tend to shy away from cutting into homes if it's going to be a hard repair job. And I'll do what's known as a trap out, where I trap the bees out and they are able to I put a mechanism on the hole to where they can exit the home, but they can't get back in. And then I set up a hive of mine near the entrance, and they move into my hive over a month's period. So that alleviates any cutting into a home. But sometimes there's situations where a home is old, or they're telling me they're going to redo the house anyway, or things like that, and I'll go ahead and just saw into a home, uh, as neatly as I can, and remove the bees right then and there. Or sometimes the bees are exposed under a mobile home, which there's a lot of those in Florida.
Do you
And
remember that? Do you remember that my dad used to sell mobile homes?
I surely do.
Okay.
I surely do.
All right. Anyway,
So anyway, I sometimes I'll scoot under a mobile home, and I'll have 50,000 bees inches from my face, and I'll have to vacuum and cut out comb from under a mobile home. But I tell you what, it's probably one of the most relaxing jobs I've ever had in my life, believe it or not.
really?
Yes, I'm suited up, so they're not going to
Yeah.
get me. But it's
Uh,
very peaceful, especially
um,
when they're nice.
you just tossed out the figure 50,000. I assume that's an exaggeration, but maybe not.
No, it's not an exaggeration. A good sized colony could easily be 50,000 bees.
Damn. So you vacuum 50,000. Where do they go? How big is
Well,
your
yeah,
vacuum apparatus?
my apparatus could hold, approximately half that. And but I don't leave them in the vacuum cleaner that long. After I vacuum them out, cut the comb, I'll find the queen, or sometimes she'll end up in my vacuum. But that's when I dump them in my hive right then and there, after I remove everything from under the mobile home. And that's when I sing "Reunited." Actually,
That's a touching moment.
that's when I reunite the bees. Yes.
That's a touching moment. So, if does the queen have to be there, or does it all go to hell?
Very good question. The queen does not have to be there, but with her pheromones, they actually follow her pheromones. That that anchors them to the hive I'm putting them in. And also, they need a queen. Obviously, she's an egg layer, is what she is. She doesn't do anything else. But just to perpetuate the colony, she needs to be there. Otherwise, they'll have to raise a new queen, or I'll insert another queen from another source. But yes, to answer your question, when you do a removal and you find the queen, and I put her in a little hair clip type thing, it's called a queen clip, and I trap her for a couple of days. But it anchors, and it attracts and anchors the bees to my box until I can seal them up at nightfall and bring them home.
So, if you bring all these bees home, how many bees do you have?
You mean presently as a whole in my backyard?
Yeah,
How many? I've got about 15 to 20 colonies in my backyard, and I guess,
but
times 20,000
damn.
per colony on average.
So you're sort of like the Manhattan of bees
Yeah,
in
but
terms of population.
exactly. Or, I don't know, because I'm not a major beekeeper as far as commercial beekeeper, so I'm more like the New London of bees.
Yeah, well, that's not a bad thing to be. The whaling city of bees. So,
Correct. Except I don't have any nuclear subs in my backyard.
all right. So, what do you do with the bees that you have? Is it just, would it be like someone having, a house full of cats? It's just something you like, or do you do uh,
Mm.
productive stuff with it?
Well, a lot of people actually ask me for honey, but and some people do produce honey. I am not a honey producer in my case because I sell bees to people. There are actually people, hobbyists, who are interested in starting a beehive, and that's what I do. I sell bees to people.
I mean, you had to know this question was coming, but how many times have you been stung?
Countless times. And I'm actually beginning to wonder if I'm becoming allergic. I have suspicious things that are changing as, I don't know if it's getting old or what it is, or just, but generally I don't have to go to the hospital, and I don't have anaphylaxis, but yes, I do get stung.
Huh. Wow. Or,
But not, I still wear a suit. It's usually an accident where they, get underneath my jeans, at the,
yeah.
I don't dress up like a spaceman. So there's,
I mean, those
they
things
can,
do look sort of spacey,
yes,
spaceman-like.
I just wear a jacket and a veil, and just jeans. So there's on occasion, there could be one on the ground that just innocently crawls up my leg, and
Yeah.
then you'll get stung. But no, I don't get stung often.
You may or may not remember that I have a horrible fear of spiders. And the reason I'm bringing this up is so you're under a mobile home or in someone's attic or whatever.
Yes.
How many times do you see spiders?
I don't really ever see spiders. Sometimes I look around to make sure there's no snakes or anything like that before I crawl under there. But usually the crawl spaces under there are pretty clear.
Wow. All right. That's
And
good to know.
snakes would be my biggest fear.
So if you ever need me to apprentice, I could do it.
Yes, absolutely. I would love that.
Do you wish that the phrase the horse whisperer had never been invented? Because I assume you hear that you are a bee whisperer from people.
Well, yes, I do hear people say that, and I laugh because still cannot stand the touch of bugs crawling on me. Direct skin. I cannot stand it.
Even
And
bees.
yeah, correct. At this point, even at this point in my career, I still have that reflex to where if something crawls on me, I go crazy. Which is ironic, because I
Sure.
love doing this. But there are beekeepers. In fact, JP the Bee Man, if anybody wants to look him up online, YouTube, he does removals, completely unsuited, with no gloves, no jacket, no veil, and he's handling the combs and the bees, and he gets stung from time to time. But there's no way on earth I could do something like him, and I consider him the bee whisperer, somebody like JP. And
He's the Jimi Hendrix of bees.
he absolutely is, and he's got a New Orleans accent, and
Oh,
he's
nice.
a very very good channel. But I actually learned from him, watching YouTube.
All right. Well, Patrick, is there anything that we should know about bees that we haven't discussed?
Yeah, another thing, there's, like I said, the bees up north, they have a hard time getting through the winters, but the south, we have a creature that's called a small hive beetle. They're a little bit bigger than the size of a pinhead, uh, in the head of a pin, I mean, and they can take out colonies with no problem. They get in there and they lay eggs, and the honey and larvae or the comb in general, and it ferments, and it's called sliming the hive. So sometimes, if the hive beetles get out of control, you can open up a colony. It's just a mess in there that's, runny, fermented mess. And see, that's something down south, what we have to worry about. And I think they were introduced in about the 90s. They came from Africa.
So, do you have a way to? I noticed that you, and people should know this too, that you do not use any sort of toxins to remove bees. That you use an almond oil
Yes, a repellent, and I only spray
repellent.
that in there when all the bees are removed. I'll put it in there so they won't land again. But I don't use any toxins or treatments in my colonies. I'm kind of a hippie beekeeper, so
That's the way it
I just
should be.
well, you would think, but
Yeah.
that's a hot topic, and I'm not going to go too deep into that. But I do not treat. I do not treat for even hive beetles, and
Okay, that was my question. Yeah.
I rely on strong genetics and strong population. A heavily populated honeybee colony will keep all these in check. You know, there'll be a few in there crawling around, but they'll keep them corralled, so to speak.
My last question to you. Do you hear bees humming in your sleep?
No, I actually don't think about them too much, other than when I'm working or out on my back patio. They're actually they've been a source of peace in my life, if you will.
No, that sounds good. I get it. I get it.
Yes.
All right, Patrick. Thank you so much for your time and pleasant bee removal to you.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to interview me, and hopefully this will be some sort of education for somebody out there, and we can keep this hobby of beekeeping going forward. We need more hobbyists keeping bees and less big commercial operations. We need to have everybody with a beehive in their backyard going forward.
I'm going to catch one today and start it. Job Description is a production of the Day Publishing Company in New London, Connecticut, and is hosted by me, Rick Coster. Peter Wappy produces and edits the show. Our theme song is Here and Now by the band Wind Up, written by Michael Clay and Ernie Myers. Can't get enough of me? I write a free weekly newsletter called The Fun Never Stops. You can subscribe at theday.com/newsletters. If you want to support this podcast, leave a rating or a review wherever you listen to, or even better, subscribe to The Day at theday.com/subscribe.